So while we were waiting on some music to drop, while we were waiting on some artists to give some anticipated dates or release dates for albums, there has been quite a decent bit of stir going on into other different parts of the music scene. And one section I wanted to focus on in particular is XXXTentacion's post on Twitter when it regards to releasing some more posthumous material and the documentary that has been in production. I think it's been for a little while now. But I'm going to read the statement with you, and we're just going to go through it just really quickly. I don't want to make this terribly long. And I'll just say, I'll preface right away that I'm not the best person when it comes to pronouncing names. So I'm going to go with Joseph as the pronunciation. I'm terribly sorry if I'm really butchering the name, but I'm not really the best at pronouncing names and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to go through this. We're going to give it a talk, and we'll go from there. So, to Joseph's supporters across the world, we continue to be amazed at the love and support that X's fans show on a daily basis. We know how much his music means to all of you, and his impact continues to be as powerful as it's ever been. It is important for us to continue to honor Jaw's legacy, and in that spirit, we are planning an exciting 2022. One of our first initiatives is to get as much of X's music from his earliest days as an artist up on all DSPs, which I would assume to mean is designated streaming platform service. We have been working diligently to clear as much of it as possible. We are excited to announce our first release this Friday, with Vice City hitting all streaming services for the first time. We will continue to release music as we clear it, and we are making sure we do it in a way that stays true to how X released each song originally. Visit www.makohill.com, which I believe his Twitter was changed to that, to sign up and stay up to date with X-related news and be first to be notified as the site evolves. Follow at MakeOutHill on Twitter for more updates. Beyond the music, we know X's fans have been waiting patiently for the documentary that we'll be sharing updates on soon. Thank you again for your support and for continuing to honor and celebrate the life of Jaw, the estate of Joseph Onfroy, aka XXXTentacion. So to break down a couple of pieces from this statement, we're just talking about how it's planning an exciting 2022. And the first major thing is that we're going to be releasing music that is from the earliest days of X's rapping, which is probably going to be older SoundCloud tracks, which I think is an automatic first good step. Because unfortunately, the posthumous album or posthumous singles kind of wave that happens in the late 2010s has a very negative connotation to it. And unfortunately, X's kind of dealings with music, while it was definitely not his doing of releasing Bad Vibes Forever, and unfortunately has shined a light as this is being a bad example of posthumous releases. But I'm seeing a definite change as we're going more into the Mac Miller direction. If you remember back very late last year where Mac Miller's Faces was released on streaming platforms, instead of trying to find old posthumous verses, posthumous songs that were never released, just putting the songs on the streaming platforms, I think that's honestly the best way to do that. And I think releasing the singles that already had X's blessing, X put them out, they're not like cobbled together, they're not like sewn together like very loosely, there's no like kind of rough draft verses. I think this is honestly a better way to do this, and I'll be honest myself, I'm not into X's music. I did listen to 17, I did listen to Question Mark, and of course I listened to Skins and Bad Vibes Forever. And I think X is incredibly talented, and I think he was incredibly versatile, and he is super impactful to especially the 2010s of rap. Like, if we're thinking of one of the more influential artists in the 2010s, I think X is definitely in that conversation when it comes to the focus on mental health, the focus on more, if you could say, like more emo or more punk or more rock direction, and also a focus on more acoustic driven and more kind of experimentation or branching out into other genres. I think X is incredibly influential for being versatile and being experimental in a way, I guess. So while I'm not overly versed into X's music and I don't have this connection that a lot of people do, I totally understand the connection that people have, and I totally understand the impact and the amazing talent that X had. And being able to go back to the very early stuff that X released is going to be very cool for me because I've never heard it before. So I'm going to hear very early snippets of what X was sounding like. I don't know if kind of the experimentation of the versatility would carry on to the earlier tracks, but it may be able to get an understanding and to appreciate more of X as an artist, especially earlier on in his career, and to kind of just get into a glimpse of what he was going for. So I think it's a really cool way of just going back to an old catalog that already has X's blessing, that already has X's stamp of approval on it because he released it himself. It's a good way to do that. And of course, the portion that matters to me the most is that we are making sure to do it in a way that stays true to how X released each song originally. That's definitely like making sure that basically saying, I think this is how it's put. It's like, don't worry, we're not going to do a Bad Vibes Forever kind of rollout ever again. Because Bad Vibes Forever, if you remember that release of that album, it was so cobbled together. It was a total mess. There's so many just like very questionable decisions. There was a lot of questionable like placements. It didn't seem finished. It seemed very rushed. And it honestly like dug a deep hole for X's music. And it was all released so quickly that like X's name was kind of just in limbo for a long period of time. And while X was always talked about, and X is still being talked about to this day, the release of music was more of a worrying thing than now. For me, it's more of a positive thing now because we're actually getting to some older material that I think is going to be very interesting to hear on streaming services for the first time. So I think it's going to be differently handled, and I think this is going to be a lot more better of an approach. I think people are learning. Some people are not when you consider Pop Smoke's faith and all this kind of stuff. But I think people are starting to learn that really, is money really worth ruining a legacy? So hopefully the release of just singles, which is a good thing. If it was a full album, I would be very against that. But it's just a collection of singles, so I think that's a good step. And the X documentary, I think that's going to be incredibly interesting because X was all over the place. I know he did streaming. I know he was very immersed in like the YouTube community, especially when you consider like how close X was with I'm Dante and a couple other YouTubers. He delved into multiple genres, and he's a very interesting character. And when you look at the music videos and just the transformations that he had with his tattoos and the hair colors and the fashion style that he had, he's a very interesting character. So I think with the documentary, I think it's going to be really interesting and really intriguing to get a very much more personal and much more intimate glimpse of how X's process of making music is like, what his previous like family life or maybe his life before music was like, his relationship with multiple artists like Ski Mask and Denzel Curry and all this kind of stuff. I think it's going to make for a very interesting watch, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to watching that. But to summarize just all the stuff that has been discussed in this Twitter response and Twitter post, I am optimistic about this. I think there is a different connotation. I think there's a different kind of feeling to all of this stuff being released. I'm much more confident in this than putting out a full like mixed bag of an album or pushing something like that. So I think this is a good first step. And of course, I still am going to have my reservations. I'm still going to have this kind of pessimism, especially when you started off kind of the posthumous legacy run in such a very odd and very like messed up kind of way. So I'm still going to have those reservations, but I'm much more promising of this kind of rollout than I was the one back in like 2016 to 2017 when I believe Bad Vibes Forever was released. So leave a like, comment, subscribe. We're going to be trying to talk about as much music as possible as it releases. So thank you for watching, and I guess I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out.